We are Southern Illinois.
Steffi baseline right on Jonovic, dribbled underneath the rim, reverse back in front of the paint with Jonovic guarding. Sykes on the basket cut, lays it in, and he's fouled. Davion Sykes with an and one opportunity.
It's time for Saluki basketball.
House crossing over Hubert, spinning at the nail, fading away at the Valley Tech's got the bucket plus the foul. He baited Huberts into it.
Now, here is the voice of the Salukis, Luke Martin.
Here on the Saluki Radio Basketball Podcast, as we will preview this road trip to Iowa with the Drake Bulldogs first on Wednesday and then close it out with you and I on the weekend. Voice of Drake, Michael Admire, will join us on the podcast today. Michael is a tremendous human being and does a great job over at Drake in all of their athletic department, tells so many great stories, and he's called some really great moments for Drake in recent memory. And obviously Drake right there with Southern could be a game that we're going to see again for a third time. And it looks like odds are, Coach Watson, I think this is probably going to be the 8-9 game in St. Louis between Drake and Southern, but we'll have plenty of time to talk about that and converse about that here in the final stretch. But of course, first things first, we have to start with the game against Bradley. Bradley making it 8 in a row in this series against SIU, a game that was, Bradley got off to the really good start, led by as many as 12. Give SIU credit, Coach Watson. They came right back to take the lead. And then it was that inning of the first half that got a little wonky, which led to Bradley leading by as many as 13 in the second half. But again, Southern climbed all the way back to make it a one-possession game, and they played their tails off, just again, unable to get the timely three to fall in the game. Southern 0 for 15 in the game from three.
6-17, Mayo gets 2 free throws, and they were just pure, man. They were nothing but the bottom of the net. It's 53-52, and it looks like, Banterra Magic was about to take place. And then, we can point to a lot of things, and because we broadcast for a team, and, I'm dying the wool, maroon bleeding Saluki, it's so you tend to look at what your team did and things maybe they didn't do. But the reality was, from those 2 free throws until really when a big steal off of an offensive rebound by Sykes, Jaquan Johnson took that game over. I've said it all morning, and this will be the third time I say it to someone. If Jaquan Johnson, in my opinion, is not first-team All-League, don't have an All-League. This guy is the heart and soul of this team. That is not hard to figure out. I mean, look, this guy's maybe 5'8", but, man, you talk about a heart that's 7'8". His ability to score in those last minutes, I mean, he makes a jumper, he gets a layup, he hits 2 free throws. He's part of a huge play that we'll talk a little bit about, where at just under the 2-minute mark, they ran an action that got Hubricks a big 3 that really sealed it. And then Johnson seals off the game after the offensive rebound. Steffi comes down, shoots a quick 3. Sykes gets the rebound, and Johnson comes and snatches it from him, races down, makes it 68-60. We all know the score was 70-60. It was more Jaquan Johnson than even Bradley. I mean, he was just terrific.
He was, and I know Coach Wardle post-game, the video that they put on social media when he was talking to his team in the locker room, he pinpointed 2 more guys that he gave a lot of credit for. Corey Thomas apparently was sick and had to play through the game through an illness, and thought he gave them tremendous minutes in the game despite being ill. And A.J. Smith guarding Calron House. I know Q in the game, of course, ends up with 26 points. Coach Wardle telling his team after the game was like, thought you really made him earn those points, and the spectacular player that obviously Q is in the game. So Coach Wardle gave credit to those 2, but I'm right there with you, Coach Watson, when it comes to Jaquan Johnson. And you talk about the ending of the game. I mean, how big was the end of the half? He gets that steal. Southern has a chance to potentially get a bucket to go into halftime. They don't. Now, Bradley didn't either, but he at least keeps it a tie game. And you don't want to say that end of half buckets always carry the day when you go into the second half, but more times than not, they can prove to be a really critical role in the game. And just whenever I said it on the air, you can't relax when that dude's on you at any point, because if you relax, you're going to lose the basketball. And we talk about it so much with a lot of guys throughout our league, and we've had in the past, especially the elite players. And this is why I put Jaquan Johnson in that category. His facial expression never changes, never gets too high. Even after a big bucket, you just kind of see him. I got to make the next play. That's what made Xavier Johnson so good when we were here with X was just always so calm, cool, and collected in the big moments. And there's a lot of other big players too that we can list off. But to me, that when I watched Jaquan Johnson on Sunday, I wasn't just seeing a first-team all-league guy. I was seeing a guy that was playing at the Larry Bird Player of the Year caliber.
Absolutely. I mean, how do you say that, Luke? I mean, but when you watch him play in person, it's so obvious. You've been saying it. You've been saying it for the last couple of weeks about this guy. Don't be surprised this guy didn't end up Player of the Year. And you say stuff a lot that I have to kind of process and think through. And then when you see it live, I'll tell you a gigantic play. And Southern did a good job with this play. Before I describe it, I'm going to say again the word play. Bradley ran really great offense in the last 6 minutes. Aside from the steals that led to a layup, but then also led to a missed A.J. Smith three that then Southern came down and Q got a bucket that Southern really felt like maybe that was where this thing could flip. Bradley ran terrific action. They know where their guys can score. Thomas makes a big three in the first half. He's a three-point shooter. We remarked, can't be late on Thomas. Guy's too good of a three-point shooter. Hubricks, Southern did a really good job all in all in Hubricks. The back-breaking play with, just under 2 minutes where Steffi got taken away. It was a play. It was a really good play. It was a design play to create separation that Hubricks separated from Drew. Drew's only mistake on that play was that he didn't force him in one direction. So what they did on that play, and I'll get back to Jaquan's huge play that got it, another separation. On the play that we talked to Coach about, they ran in isolation. They ran a misdirection, what they call an Iverson cut, to get Vanderknapp on the right side. They loaded up Smith, or I think it was Smith or Thomas, one of the two, on another part of the floor. I'm sorry, Smith was actually going to set a single screen. Johnson went left. He threw the ball to Jonovich on top, and the play started. It was a single. It was going to be a tight curl off of Smith for Hubricks. If you could have the play over again, Drew would have liked to have just forced him one way. He could have forced him the way he came out, but he basically just fronted him. And so what Hubricks did, a smart play, he walked Drew into where the single screen was, where Smith was on the left block, and then he just quick, hard separation, straight cup up the line. Jonovich just tossed it to Hubricks. Hubricks had to make the play, but he did. And what really impressed me was you can't tell me that kid's never shot that shot 1,000 times in practice. That's what kids, when I hear kids talking about putting in the work, are you working on that play? Are you working on the separation where, look, it's like Jake said, if that ball doesn't go in the basket at 151, 156, whatever it was, Southern's got the ball with 3 points with a chance, with plenty of time, lots of possessions left. But that's what Jake was talking about. You have plays that, they go your way, they don't go your way. In that case, it went Bradley's way. And the reality was, my point was, it was a play. It wasn't like we're going to let guys go out and make plays. No, it was a play designed for Hubricks. You either take him off the curl cut, going up the left side, or you straight cut as hard as you can to separate. It's a hard angle. Turn your feet, turn your body 180 degrees, raise it up and shoot it. They can't foul you. He made the shot. Man, great congratulations. Back to another big-time play at 3:06. I think about Matt Painter when he kind of went on his little rant with a reporter. It was kind of a wise guy to him, and this guy would question his ability, how they guard stuff. So Matt just overblew the whole concept. He's talking about Spain and snake and wiggle and all these things, and Matt was having fun with it, but he was making a point like, hey, man, you can either write or you can coach, but you can't do both. And what happened, I kind of got a kick out, went back and watched this morning. Bradley run the Spain play. The Spain play came from Spain. Spain was having a great deal of luck, and they still are great basketball in their country. And Ricky Rubio and Gasol, these guys were having a lot of success. Well, what Spain created in European or in world basketball, they will set a ball screen. So Jonovic set a ball screen on Johnson, and then Hubrick set a back screen on Jonovic's man so that Jonovic could dive for a bucket at the rim, which they were having a lot of success with early. And then Jonovic was going to sprint off for another option to be able to get a three up on top. Well, Jaquan Johnson just turned the ball. Southern did a good job on that switch, and Drew ended up switching off on him. But the mistake was, or the unfortunate part was, Johnson at his size just kept turning the corner. He kept going deeper. And for players of his size, typically, we call that getting too deep with the ball because you get shut down. But for a guy like Johnson at his size and his strength, he kept going underneath, got himself an angle, went right up for a layup. And it wasn't a layup. It was a power basket at the rim. Drew tried walling up the best he could. I think it was Weber was obviously in the game because he played the last 440 of the game. But here's another example where Jaquan Johnson wasn't going to be denied. Could that thing gone the other way? Sure, it could have. But it didn't. It was a 4-point game at the time. They run that Spain action. J.J. Johnson turns the corner. He puts it up 63-57. Then, there was a missed shot. They come down. They miss a shot. Then Q puts us on his back. I mean, man, I'm telling you, I'm giving Jaquan a lot of credit in this segment. Q was just as spectacular. I mean, you talk about a guy that was just willing his team the best he could. 2 old-fashioned three-point plays to keep this thing close. He got it to 63-60, and then they ran that last play we talked about with just under 2 minutes after Q makes the free throw and cuts it to 3. And Bradley they executed their offense, and it wasn't by chance. They were running action for their guys. And that's impressive to see. And all these things I'm describing explains why Bradley's right in the hunt to win a championship in these last 4 games.
They're used to being in that spot, and you can see Coach Wardle's team it wasn't a spot that they're not unfamiliar with. And that's why you got to give him so much credit. And I'm glad you went into those details of really the offense that they ran late. And he has said to us, right, that, man, he's been kind of frustrated with where they were at defensively. But, man, they've made a lot of strides. They were good defensively yesterday as we record this here on Monday morning. Kind of the last 2 things I want to touch up on this game in particular, Coach Watson, before he moved to the league as a whole. Again, it was a comment that we made post-game that I don't think it was by any surprise that the lone Saluki in the game that had a positive plus-minus was Jaheim Weber. And the work that Jaheim did defensively, and that's not to say that it was a perfect game by Jaheim. No one is saying it was, and Jaheim would be on here today saying it wasn't a perfect game for him. But I was really happy for him in the game because, man, when he was on the floor, those were the times when Southern really started to get their run back in the first half and ultimately their run to get back into the second half.
For a guy that really has never known all season when he was coming and going, for him, and recently in the last couple of weeks, it's getting better for him. He's not a high-volume player, but for a second-year guy in college, a first-year guy on the floor, to play in such a big game, it showed a lot of trust by his coach, and Jaheim really played well. The snag Southern has, in that game, when you have your only three-point shooter in Rollins and Ligbe, who didn't have a great game. But look, why did he not have a great game? It's because Bradley did a great job on a guy that's also saying, hey, this guy's an all-league player here, and you better know where he is at all times. We're going to make it hard for him. So you give Bradley a lot of credit there. Not to mention, with Rollins, your guys averaging 8 rebounds a game. Man, to have him on the bench the last 440, I get it. Coach explained about the humbling part of this game, but the reality part, Weber did a nice job. But man, for a team that really struggles to score, and this Southern team, we're now at a point where we're actually averaging 70 possessions in league play, which is a really pretty high number. The problem is when you play high possessions, you want to you want to do that to score high points to put pressure on the other team's defense. Southern's not getting that advantage. They're scoring just under a point of possession. Their offense and defense efficiency is almost equal, and it's good. I mean, the defensive side is okay. I mean, it's good enough to be 6 and 10 in the league, and but the reality is, great. I agree with you. Weber had a good run. They're going to need him in these last 2 weeks going into conference play. Sykes was terrific. The really cool play that didn't show up on the stat sheet was when Southern got down 6 after the Spain action I described. Southern came right down the floor against the zone defense, and Bradley's zone really came up the floor. All 4 of their guys came up the floor. Jonovich was the lone guy in the middle, and they threw the ball over the top right away into Sykes. Weber set a seal screen. He was sealing to get a lob over the top, possibly, but it also, a second purpose was he sealed Jonovich, and Sykes drove right down the gut, and pump fake got, I think it was Smith, or it was either Smith or Thomas up in the air. Then he finished off the layup to cut it back to 4 points. So Weber's doing more than just a few things that show up on the stat sheet. He's on really the toughest play, I think, of the game. Really the biggest unfortunate situation happened in the last 4 minutes of the game is when there was another play that Bradley ran, a two-man game with Smith and Jonovich, and they were trying to isolate Jonovich inside on Weber, go at the freshman, right? Well, what was really impressive, number one, Weber really did a great job of forcing Jonovich out of that 10-foot zone, and he made him come up the floor to try to get the pass, and plus Weber deflected the pass. The pass went back to Smith. Jonovich went to set a ball screen, what we call the pistols action, on the side of the floor. Damian and Weber switched, okay? Weber was in a great spot on Smith, okay, because Smith had just missed a corner 3 on the left side. He wasn't going to take that shot again. When you switch, the fight is on. And for whatever reason, I know Damian loved to have the play over again. He released from Jonovich. Obviously, Jonovich was going to bury him as deep as he could, but you had Sykes on the backside, and that's when you got to trust your defense in the right spot. Sykes was in the perfect spot, so if there was a lob, Sykes was going to get it. And Mayo, for whatever reason, left Jonovich as if they were going to switch back, and Smith just tossed inside. Jonovich catch, scores. But the point is, while there was a mistake there, those things that just shows you switching is hard, and you've got to be committed to it. But for a guy like Weber to be involved in it, he did exactly what he needed to do. Unfortunately, the senior kind of left his spot, left his post, and that was an unfortunate part. But Weber's really coming. And I agree with Coach with what he said after the game. This guy's going to be something else as he continues to get more experience, more confidence. And here's the bottom line. The individual development has to continue with all, we talk about the three-point shooting lack there of a Southern. Our individual development it's not getting a good grade because we're shooting at abysmal numbers from 3 guys that are college basketball players. And that's where, the coaching staff's got to look at themselves and say, man, what are we doing from an individual development standpoint that we're having this lack of success? But as Weber continues to get better, he's going to be something really fun to cheer for.
Yeah, and as you said, Coach Watson, when you look at, again, the Ken Pom metrics, which really enjoy looking at, 365 teams in the country, Southern is 364 in three-point shooting percentage now. And again, that only accounts for your Division I games for SIU, which for Southern, they've only played one non-Division I game. So it's not like that one game would really flip it a ton anyways. But 27.6%, 364 out of 365. The good news is that defensive side is a lot of green, as we have discussed. Southern's done a good job defensively, and that's why they've been in so many games, but just haven't quite got over that hump from an offensive standpoint to make those key shots. The last note that I want to pinpoint is really Davion Sykes. Davion, who we talked to after the game, and what I really want to pinpoint with him and what I hope, and I know our fans recognize too, and Davion's not the only one. I've always marveled, especially, when you get in the position that we are, when it's not easy to do post-game shows when you lose. It's really hard to do them when you lose. They're fun as heck when you win because everybody wants to talk to you. When you lose, nobody really wants to talk to you. But what I was appreciative of what Davion and what many of our players do, they calmly walk over, sit down, have a conversation, great emotional maturity throughout the whole level of the interview, when we ask about a key play in the game, which was Hubrick's three, which was the clear backbreaker three in the game, Davion in detail remembered the possession and calmly walked us through it. I know our fans recognize it because our fans are really smart fans. And that's where when you have the opportunity, when you are on a post-game show, that is who you are talking to. You're not just talking to these two guys that you're seeing right now on the screen. You're communicating to your fan base, which is the most vital part of your program. And I am just always so impressed, Coach Watson, by our players. And it's a huge credit to Davion. It's a huge credit to all right. We've talked so highly about Rollins, whomever. I mean, insert Damian Mayo was terrific the other night, and he's been terrific after some tough losses this year. To me, that's worth noting, is that to talk about how I am just really proud of our players and how they understand the importance of the segment that they have with us after a game, because more times than not, sometimes that's the segment that's hard to get over as importance within a program. And I'm telling you, our guys and Davion Sykes, man, they get it. And man, my heart aches for a guy when I hear him, talk about how big of a fan he is of Jaheim Weber. And it wasn't because that was just he's just like, man, I'm trying to score brownie points here. Like, no, you could tell that was coming from a senior's heart that knows his days are numbered here down the stretch. And I mean, to me, that's what I'm so appreciative of, especially Davion specifically, just having the emotional maturity to always be able to walk over, sit down, have a conversation, and also being able to dissect the game and talk basketball.
When you go for a job interview, I don't think an interviewer is going to pick up the conference stat sheet and find out what you shoot from three. They're going to look at your transcript. They're going to talk to you person to person. And what I keep coming back to in this whole era of professional college basketball is that the real key to the pot of gold is this degree and the culture that you come from. And Davion Sykes he represents Southern Illinois University. And I think about my daughter who has a degree from Southern Illinois, and the many people I've been a part of, so many of my friends that still come today to the games and drive hours to come back to their university. This is who Southern Illinois University is. Davion Sykes is what a Saluki is. And there is no doubt in my mind this guy is going to be just as successful as so many others. Nearly every person that has left here from Saluki basketball with a degree, just, when you see guys like Sylvester Willis and Jason Ward and Stefan Yakovovich and those guys at UIC and what they're doing with their degree, these guys are incredibly successful. Davion is exactly who Southern Illinois represents. He's going to continue to share the word, and that's what meant so much to me when he was talking about Jaheim. He goes, man, I know what this guy's going through. Neither one of us were handed, playing time on a silver platter. And those are the people that get hired right out of the gate, and they're the ones that become leaders within the corporation and eventually own the corporation.
Again, 70-60 was the final score. Bradley getting the win over SIU again now. 4 in a row in Banterra Center, 8 in a row overall in this series. Let's go ahead and talk about the rest of the league, Coach Watson. And, man, there were some just dramatic games. And don't know if you saw the video of the ending in Valparaiso, Indiana, where Valpo beats Indiana State. What a remarkable final possession of the game. 76-75 is the final score. Valpo gets the win. But that final possession, Coach Watson, started for Valpo with Owen Deese missing a three-pointer, and then Valpo continues to get chance after chance after chance. They got not one, not two, but 3 offensive rebounds on their final possession to ultimately lead to a Brody Whitaker made jumper to give them the 1-point lead with 7 seconds left. Our friend Paul Oren, we're showing the video from his vantage point. Just a crazy ending to the game. Xavier Hall had a shot at the end, just missed it. Bernard almost got the tip in to go. It's really two teams that Valpo, they have found a way to win some of these close games, Coach Watson. And man, so much like Southern Illinois, right, where you find ways to just lose games in heartbreaking fashion. I mean, I do feel for Coach Graves and his team because Coach Graves, obviously a friend of mine, and think very highly of him. And for his team to come back to take the lead and then, man, to lose a game on 3 offensive rebounds, that's about as big of a gut punch as you can take.
Yeah, Valpo's a good offensive rebound team. They had 15 for the game, but it was a well-played game. Indiana State with only 8 turnovers, Valpo with 9. Both teams shot the ball really well from the floor, especially inside the arc. Indiana State shot 54%, while only 4 of 15 from 3, something they do very well as a team. And it's just, now, neither team shot great from the free throw line. Indiana State, 9 of 13, which isn't bad at all, 69%. Valpo, very fortunate. I mean, if they don't get that shot in, they go 10 of 21 from the free throw line, and we know what that, we know how that podcast goes. But you make your own breaks too. And it comes back. What did Jake just say? I mean, he just rings in my head about possession games, or a big part of it's a matter of luck. Do you make your own luck? Sure. Offensive rebounding, you know how much I talk about it. It gives you a chance to heal some sins.
Yeah, and no question did that for Valpo in the game. JT Pettigrew, another phenomenal game for him, 14 points, 8 rebounds. Whitaker over 20 points in the game for Valpo. O&D shipped in 13, and Justice McNair off the bench this time scored 12 points for the Valpo Beacons. And Valpo going to be a team that not a lot of folks are going to want to see come St. Louis. And we talked about that 8-8 in the Valley. And again, the most wins that they have had in the Missouri Valley Conference is when they were 8-8 through 16 games. Back in the year, they made the Arch Madness final game, which was 19-20. But keep in mind, that's when it was an 18-game schedule as well. They finished with 9 wins. They got an opportunity this year to clearly knock down their most wins in league play and have a chance to be above 500 for the first time since they've joined the league. So congratulations to Coach Powell and his group on a big 1-point win against their in-state opponent in Indiana State. To Chicago, where, man, oh man, the Redbirds did not have Chase Walker, and UIC had a great day. 83-56 was the final score. It was a 7-point game at halftime, but man, a 20-point game in the second half. UIC outscored Illinois State 50-30 in the second 20 minutes of the game. Again, very well-balanced stat sheet when you look at it for UIC. Momo, who earned the start, did not come off the bench, 13 points, 6 rebounds. Rashund Washington, he scores 13 points. Elijah Crawford had 12 points, 8 assists in the game for him. But how about Bellion off the bench, 16 points. Huge contributor in the game with 8 of 11 from the field.
Gosh, I saw that box score last night. I'm like, who is this guy? And then, once you look at his bio, you remember, and you go 8 of 11. I'll tell you what, UIC turns Illinois State over 17 times. Kinziger is going a little bit better than he has been. He gets 12. The only player to score in double figures. The rest of those guys can't get going. Doherty's getting a little bit more burn and getting some more shots up. They're going to need him coming down this home stretch, and their only chance to hold up to their preseason ranking is going to be doing something special in St. Louis. And I'll tell you, it's looking much and much more like they're going to have to win 4 as well. But UIC, they're a team that, ever since they were, we had our talk with Rob Eson, we certainly got him straightened out, Luke, that's for sure. And 5 and 10 at the time, this guy's a world beater right now with his team. And when you just look at stat sheets, everything has come true from the time we talked to Coach Eson on. I mean, he wasn't he was hiding it. If he was uptight, he was hiding it, because everything he told us has come true about 6 weeks later.
Look, I'm not trying to divvy off, a talking point here, and we'll get back to the games in a moment, and especially the job that Belmont did on the road at Murray, which was remarkable. Casey Alexander's the coach of the year. Belmont wins the league. There is no doubt in my mind that Casey deserves coach of the year. I just really feel bad for Coach Eson, because I feel like any other year, if Belmont was maybe the preseason pick to win it, and they do, and UIC, if they finish second, I'm telling you, Coach Watson, to go from 0-4 in the league to be within a whisker of the top half of the league in 2 really games with Belmont. Again, Casey Alexander, we're going to get to him in a moment, because that dude deserves so many major flowers and the job he's doing with this group this year, and he does year after year. Man, Coach Eson deserves, no doubt, I think, some recognition in that conversation too, because man, the job he's done just within this season, let alone as a whole in just 2 years at UIC. Man, I mean, he's almost won, and I don't have the number off the top of my head, but he's close to winning as many games as UIC's lost in their first couple years in the Valley that he's done in just 2 years in Chicago.
Two guys that done it completely different this year. One guy gets great commend for keeping good players in his program, and Casey Alexander. I mean, he's got good players. He kept the majority of those great players. He developed them, individually developed them. He played poker with us when he was talking about, oh, we do it no different than anybody else. No, I think you're doing it quite a bit different than most people, but that's okay. That's good coach speak that we respect. But Rob Eson did it with a whole new crew. You got Henderson coming back, who's just been what appears to be, from the outside looking in, an incredible veteran of holding up, because it really only takes one knucklehead to screw up your locker room, and he's done anything but that. He starts some, he comes off the bench, but what never wavers with Henderson, his production never wavers in games. I don't recall us ever looking at these stats on a podcast saying, well, boy, Henderson wasn't very good that night. He's really impressive. And then the rest of them, it's like you just talk about the big guy. He just, it's like somebody else steps up in games in these wins.
You always love calling guys the big guy, when you can't remember their name. Bellion.
That was a butcher waiting to happen. So I did his mother a big favor by just leaving it alone, because she calls him the big guy too, from what I understand.
Yeah. Chris Masters, you should have done a better job with Coach Watson prepping him for the podcast this morning. Ante Bellion, again, a tremendous game for him. Again, he was a guy going into the Southern game that was only averaging 4 points a game. So for him to have the type of night that he did against Illinois State was big. And again, that number that I was telling you about, UIC in the MVC prior to Rob Eson's arrival, they were 8-32. And everybody within the Valley, I say everybody in the Valley, I think most people would talk about, man, how hard of a job is UIC? Rob Eson, man, he's flipped it, and give credit to him and his staff too. It's not just a one-person job too, but it's a huge credit to his staff and the job they have done. And to win 83-56, very impressive. And now as we continue on, Northern Iowa, an impressive win, 86-62 over Drake. That one in Cedar Falls, a rivalry game that is always uber competitive. Really the thing that stood out, Coach Watson, and we'll see Drake this week. We're actually going to talk to Michael Admire here in a matter of moments. Jalen Quinn didn't start the game. That caught a lot of social media attention within the Drake fan base. And Coach Henderson, after the game, basically said, look, we haven't been getting off to good starts. So Quinn does score 20 points off of their bench in his 30 minutes in the game. But you and I, Coach Jacobson, really starting to get this thing turning. Bill Hornseth, we've said his name a lot here recently, 18 points in the game. And then Leon Bond and Tristan Smith, each with 14 points each to help you and I with a massive home win. They outscored Drake 48-33 in the second half to win at 86-62.
Yeah, Tristan Smith is without question the difference in how Northern Iowa is playing now as opposed to what we saw in the Banterra Center several weeks ago. But the ability for Hornseth and Smith to dominate the middle of the lane with 32 points or however they got him is just so impressive. Drake, they've kind of gone through spurts. They're in a bad spurt right now. Hope that continues at least for one more game. Southern's got to do something about it, because Quinn is a guy. Larson is another guy that I've been really impressed with all season long. And it seems like when Larson gets going, Drake has a better chance. Federico is a guy that kind of comes and goes. He was especially good in the last 6 minutes and we'll preview our game with them. But Northern Iowa, they found themselves, and while they're right there on that cusp. They're going to be a possible Friday, maybe a Thursday, but very most likely now looking like they're shooting their way up to being a Friday only team.
What's crazy is that Northern Iowa, right now, when you look at the projected standings, and again, I'm showing it to our fans on the screen as well, they're projected to finish 12-8, which would get them into Friday. And the thing is there could be right now they have a log jam for the 2 seed at 13-7, but The Flames, no doubt, in a great spot there in the upper half, as well as with UNI. Like we said, too, I mean, man, Max Weisbrod, 18 points, 6 massive threes. He had half the threes made for UNI in the game. 86-62 win for Northern Iowa. Another rivalry game that started off like it was going to be all Murray State. 39-24 at halftime. Murray State led Belmont. And what's amazing, Coach Watson, I was watching Steve Lehman, our friend, who's the voice of the Belmont Bruins. He was interviewing Casey Alexander after the game. Belmont was down 19 near the 17-minute mark in the second half. They were up 19 with about 17 seconds left in the game. Belmont, this is not a typo. This is not a joke when I say this. They won the second half 63-31 on the road. 87-60. Jack Smiley was outstanding. He in the game, 21 points for him. He was 2 of 4 from 3, had 4 assists as well in the game. Owen Dillon, another young player in this league, 19 points, 8 rebounds with 3 threes in the game. Tyler Lumblade, 4 threes. Belmont shot the 3 really well, 10 of 22 in the game. But the resiliency that Belmont shows to go on the road, to be down 19 in a rivalry game, and then just, as Jeff Bidwell described, and I listened to Jeff in the second half, just turn Murray's water off and straight off, and man, they turned their water on in a hurry.
They are we talk about Murray's ability to score the ball, and they have the ability to hang big numbers. But when you talk about two teams scoring 94 points in 20 minutes of basketball, I'd like to know what the over-under was on one of those quick betting deals. And on, that's unbelievable how many points they scored, especially for such a high-level game. Two teams, first and second place at the time. I'm kind of looking ahead now. What's really interesting, Belmont only has 3 games left. They've got 2 home games with Indiana State and Evansville. And as crazy as this league is, I could see something nuts happening. You wouldn't think it'd ever happen. But that last game, Belmont at Illinois State and Murray State at Bradley, the league could go all the way to March 1st where it's being undecided and something crazy could happen. But all that said, coming back to this Belmont team and their ability to just wear on you offensively. I mean, do they guard? I think they're like most teams. I think they're better at everything, right? I think everything they do, when you're leading this league, you're better at everything. They weren't great defensively. Certainly the night that Southern won in Nashville, but they still held Southern to 68 points. It's not like it was a high-flying game where Southern hit one the way they did, but they rebound well. They're smart. They're, again, a team that runs such good offense. They don't let their players make plays. They design plays for players to perform in. And there's such a big difference in scoring. You can't you cannot allow sub-level performance shooters to make decisions on shots when your season's on the line time and time again. Shot clock dictates a lot. Okay, sometimes there are going to be some shots that have to happen. Teams like Belmont, this Bradley team that we watched in person yesterday, they know where they score from. They do not experiment. They run action, and they have counters. The quick hitter we talked about more out with on Hubricks, that wasn't the only play, the only option in that play, but when you think about Belmont and just how many weapons they have and how they can bring guys off the bench, I think West is an unsung hero. We talk about the scoring punch of so many different players, Sharnowski inside and Brigham Rogers backing him up. And we've absolutely made our point with Lungblade and Jenkins, but the West coming back from a nasty shoulder injury and then having a guy like Smiley come off the bench and back him up, they have incredible depth that is productive. But I still say this league is not decided yet in terms of, I think Belmont's going to get one trophy, but Bradley could get a piece of it as well. Murray's kind of shot themselves in the foot yesterday with what they've got to do, and then they have to finish at Bradley at the end of the year. But Man, this league's going to be fun for the next 2 weeks anyway.
It is, but you were talking about can Belmont defend? And to me, the answer is emphatically yes. You look at the differences between last year to this year. Last year, now these numbers were when Southern played them, so the numbers aren't completely up to date, but it's when game number 2 is around. They were 9th in field goal percentage defense last year, led the league in defensive field goal percentage this year. They were 10th in points per possession defensively a year ago, 2nd in points per possession this year. They have made drastic strides. Now, the one thing that stayed the same, which is pretty remarkable, they've always been a team that doesn't foul a lot, which would lead you to think the physicality on defense at times can be in question, but they also want to keep their guys in the game because they know how valuable, of course, they are into the process. So teams typically don't get to the free throw line a lot because they don't foul. That number has stayed the same. Their free throw rate was 2nd in the league when they played Southern the last time. But to me, those defensive numbers have improved drastically for Belmont within a year.
What is their with your, if you have it in front of you, what is their efficiency defensively? What's that number itself?
105.6 was the number the last time I checked. And because, you're so really good at, telling me when you're going to do this, I'm going to try to stall. This is what's called stalling in our business, to try to look up to get the number ready for what we do. But their defensive number overall in the years hasn't changed much. 105.7, which is in the 80th percentile of D1. It's top 100 in the country, 73. If you go just in league in terms of their defensive rating, their defensive rating is a little bit lower, 112.7. So their defensive rating in the league's taking a little bit more of a hit than overall. And we talked about their non-conference schedule. It wasn't the most difficult non-conference schedule that they played, but still their numbers are drastically better.
Yeah, the efficiency side of what they're giving up per possession, for me personally, means far more than even percentages. Their percentages are really good, but those numbers are they explain it, don't they, Luke? I mean, just in terms of when you break it down that way, why is Belmont so good in addition to having terrific offensive players? Man, I mean, again, Murray's got terrific offensive players. Golly, can they, we're talking about King for player of the year, trying to decide whether it's him or Jackson. And now those guys have kind of fallen out of the conversation. But with what Belmont has put together, they're a team. And Roger Powell, made that point, and you said it on one of our last podcasts, how he said, this is an NCAA team. And this is the argument we all are going to have, because unfortunately, they have one bad day in St. Louis. I think we know what that fate's going to be, and it's really that's the unfortunate part about where college basketball is not really being honest with themselves. When you will probably take a team in a Power 4 league, that's under 500 in their conference play. I think you're giving them far too much value in what they bring to college basketball and the interests of college basketball fans. But look, that's not for me to decide.
Yeah, it is. It is for you to decide. You're the college basketball czar.
I will also like to just comment. I thought you really handled the ability to not have something just written down where you had to really think on your feet. And I think that's going to help your future employment someday. I think I really helped you with a future interview.
Well, I appreciate that. That's what you always do. You always
I'm just looking out for you. I'm the veteran looking out for the young guy.
You are the veteran looking out for the young guy. That is exactly what you do at all times, especially on live radio. You always look out for me in those situations. Look, the last note that I do want to make on this game too is just, and I don't want to say I'm trying to find the best way to phrase it. And what I'm really getting to, and the point that I'm getting to is, we always talk about the evaluation process, and not just the evaluation process of getting players into your program, but also evaluation process of in-game moments. You look at Belmont this year, 5 games this year, Coach Watson, they have trailed by double digits. They have come back to win 4 of them.
Whew.
And 2 of them, one 19 points down the other night on the road, the other 25 points down at Drake, both of those on the road. They found a way to come back. So to me, that also shows the in-game. I know Casey will give credit to his players, but like the ability to see where a game is at in the moment, to evaluate where you're at in the moment, to know how to communicate that to your players to get it flipped. And what's amazing is everyone still does. Like we all talk about, man, can you imagine if Coach Alexander kept a lot of those pieces in place where if we were in the old days of college basketball where you didn't have the transfer portal, imagine how good this team would be with all these pieces. But then you make the argument of he still won't be able to evaluate and get even really good pieces now because no one spent a lot of time going, man, Belmont's lost a lot. And it's because Casey Alexander does a remarkable job of talent evaluation, what matters to his program, what matters to their style and how they play, and then ultimately just a tremendous in-game tactician to where, telling you, man, there are so many times where you're in a game, and then we felt it this year in our games, there is never a moment where you feel comfortable. Even if you have a lead, even when you feel you're in a really good spot, when that dude's on the other sideline, you know you can never rest. And to me, that's the job that has just been remarkable what he's done and why his team is one win away from securing the conference championship and in my eyes, easily the coach of the year in our league, even though, as we said, Rob Eson's done a great job.
Coach Alexander's pushing a lot of buttons right. And, is there a luck factor to it? Absolutely. Ask Davey Johnson, and if they don't win a World Series this year with the payroll he's got, all of a sudden whose fault it is too. But Casey Alexander really knows his personnel. Again, it comes back to a lot of it comes with trust in your guys when things don't go well and just knowing what, kind of looking down the road in possessions, what can happen. And, but a friend of mine, and I'll leave his name out of it, he was talking about two elite coaches in the Big Ten, and he coaches against them. And he said, Ben McCollum and Coach Medved at Minnesota, two former Drake coaches. They are elite coaches. We talk about a lot about the talent level. And, I was just listening to Gillespie, another player from Belmont that's gone on to a couple places. Now he's at Tennessee, and I heard him on one of the national shows talking about, his success, so forth. And, we have great players in this league. We still do. Man, we have great coaches, guys that really know. It's not by coincidence that a guy like Brian Wardle pushes the right buttons. It's not coincidental that he's had such a high level of success in this league. Same with Casey Alexander. Came to this league. He didn't change what he did. They don't have different looking players because all of a sudden, well, we're going the OVC, the MVC. We got to get a different player. He got guys that apparently really fit, and he said it to us. It fits Belmont. It fits who we are and what we're about. There's just certain things that we just can't. It just doesn't work for us at Belmont, whether it's off the court, in the classroom, on the court, whatever. He's sure getting the guys that sure fit his personality, it appears. And, everybody wants to play. We can talk about Smiley doing a great job coming off the bench. If we got him in a room by himself and took him for a meal, that might not be the message necessarily. But I know this, in those 40 minutes on the court, those guys all seem to be locked in and bought in. And they give no indication that there's any kink in the armor that anybody can get through. And they are going to be a hard out from now on, whether it's in the Valley tournament or the NCAA tournament, wherever they go.
Look, everyone knows in this day and age, it's no secret that NIL is important. And I don't know exactly what Belmont's NIL is and what they have. And it's not our part to really know. But the bottom line is, it really further proves the point of you still got to evaluate and you still got to know what matters to your program and do all those things. Like, I understand that in today's climate, when you're looking at players, when you're evaluating players, there's the component where sometimes you can't even get a conversation with the player because of where you pay in terms of your pay scale. That happens. I get it. But at the same standpoint, Coach Watson, and what I think Coach Alexander continues to do a job of, you've seen even some guys previously have left this program. It's not like he's all been out of shape out of guys who he loses, or at least from a parent. Now, we're not there every day. But at least that dude is just like, all right, on to the next one. On to the next one. Here's that. Let's evaluate. Let's find that next week. Like, they don't dwell on what's going away. They focus on, all right, what do we need? What do we need in this moment? And to me, it's a tip of the cap to him and his team. I know it's a long time spent on the win there, but an 87-70 win for Belmont over Murray, and just can't say enough really good things about Coach Alexander and his program. So let's go ahead and get to the league standings before we welcome on our friend Michael Admire and the schedule for the week to come. Belmont, again, 2-game lead over Bradley right now in second. Bradley at 11-5. Murray State right behind. They're a half game ahead of UIC, 11-6. Now, Murray, the one thing that's in their spot here is they did sweep UIC this year. So in terms of tiebreakers, it's a big tiebreaker for them with UIC 1 game back in the win column at 10-6. This is where that cutoff line gets really close. Illinois State at 9-7, tied right now with UNI on the season. Of course, when you look at this Redbird schedule and what the Redbirds have upcoming, 4 really big games. They host Murray, and they still got to go to Northern Iowa, and they still got to go to their rival Bradley. And by the way, they host Belmont at the end of the year. So the Redbirds have 4 mega games to close out their conference schedule, which is why when you look at those league standings, it's going to be interesting to see how they get jumbled there in the middle. Valpo right behind, just 1 game back of UNI and Illinois State at 8-8. SIU 2 games back of Valpo at 6-10. Drake right now, they would be the 9 seed, 6-11 in Arch Madness, just because they're technically only a half game back, but they do have the tiebreaker right now over SIU, and the game on Wednesday in Des Moines could really just determine who wears what jersey in St. Louis come that week in St. Louis. Indiana State 3-13 in the league, 3 games back of Drake to get out of the 10 line. And then Evansville 2-13 right now in the season. They were off. They had their off day on Sunday and did not play. So here are the games coming up this week in the Valley. The games on Wednesday night as we preview. Bradley goes on the road again at Valpo. Won't be an easy game in the Arc for the Bradley Braves. UNI, they will go to Terre Haute to take on Indiana State. SIU, of course, will be at Drake. That game will tip off at 6:30 on Wednesday night. And then UIC will be at Evansville from the Ford Center. That game will tip at 7 o'clock. And then Murray will be at Illinois State. That game will be on national TV. That'll be the ESPNU game. That game will tip at 8 o'clock on Wednesday night from Bloomington Normal, Illinois. Well, we've gone through the Valley. We've gone through the Valley standings, and we've gone through the Valley schedule. So let's now preview that game on Wednesday with the Drake Bulldogs, with the voice of Drake, Michael Admire. Man, he's always one of our favorites. So great to welcome him on here, the Saluki Radio Basketball Podcast. As it's time for that Iowa Road Swing. We always love enjoying, spend some extra time in the state of Iowa. And it starts off in Des Moines against the Drake Bulldogs. Michael Admire, the voice of the Drake Bulldogs. There's so much within Drake's athletic department as well, joins us here on the show. Michael, always good to see you. Excited to make our trek out to Des Moines for this one on Wednesday. And man, since the last time we saw you, I know it's been a little bit of a different tone for Drake. Man, you guys were able to really ride high, get to 6-5, and since then a 6-game losing skid. Just kind of take us through what this recent stretch has been like for the Bulldogs since the last time we saw you.
No, Luca, appreciate you having me on. Rodney, great to see you as well. Excited to have you guys come through Iowa here starting midweek in Des Moines. Yeah, I mean, it kind of felt like a couple times this season that the Bulldogs had maybe turned a corner and winning 3 games in a row, getting above 500, playing themselves into position. They were in position to make a move. I think there was at one point they were 2 games out of second place and 2 games out of 9th place. And Mike Swain, my radio partner, and I were kind of going back and forth. It's like, all right, this is going to be a telling stretch for the Bulldogs. They can go one way or the other. And, you know, you kind of looked at the schedule as Bradley coming to the Knapp Center, and then it was a road swing to Nashville to play Belmont, and then we were going to stay on the road and go up and play at Illinois State. And then kind of at the tail end of that, Drake was going out on a stretch where it was 6 consecutive games where you were playing every 3 days. So it kind of felt like this was going to be, you know, a real test. Knowing going into this, it was going to be a real challenge. And frankly, Drake just hasn't been up for the challenge. 6 straight losses now. Defense has, you know, fallen to not only just fall into the worst in the Missouri Valley Conference. Cannot defend the 3-point line. And you mix in, when you start in kind of that tailspin, it's really hard to get right. And then you run into a really hot team, a team that's playing well in Northern Iowa last night, and you end up getting pounded by your in-state rival. And it's been frustrating. It's been tough. That this team had played themselves into position, beating Murray State. You felt like, gosh, this team could beat anybody on any night. And now you're just you're searching for a way to maybe get a win before you head into St. Louis, and we're already locked into Thursday night. So we're in a position now where it's not just about winning basketball games. It's about looking in the mirror. If you're a player, and I know the coaches are doing this as well, but for the players, they got to kind of look themselves in the mirror. How do I want my college career to end? How do I want these next 3 games to go? How do we want this, team's legacy to wrap up? I mean, and they're up against it. There's no doubt about it.
Michael, we can all get in our silos, and especially, for us being here at SIU and Coach Watson and I, it's why we try to do this podcast on we say daily standpoint, but on a game standpoint, because we're right there with the fans and taking the highs. And man, since you've been at Drake, I believe your 8th season, as we were talking about before, been a lot of highs, man. You've been a part of there in Des Moines, multiple different coaches, multiple different championships. And that's what makes, of course, right now, it seems like it's unheard of, right, for Drake to have a stretch like this. But when you look in totality of the program, look, there were runs where there weren't a lot of wins in Des Moines, which makes that run so much special. Obviously, Coach Henderson, tremendous coach. I think he's going to do a great job in Des Moines. Just more of how you in your role too, where you're like us, Coach Watson lived it here for SIU, and they were making tournaments year over year, and everybody got into the mindset of, no, it just happens. It doesn't just happen. It's really hard to make that happen. Just how you try to talk through with the fan base right now that, of course, has been used to so many highs here in recent memory, and you as well, being on the job there in Des Moines.
Yeah, I mean, I know everybody in the Missouri Valley is playing their small violin for us over here at Drake right now, and I get it. It's a down year for the Bulldogs. 3 straight MVC tournament championships. We played in the tournament, made it into the second round, and so I know no one's feeling bad for the Bulldogs right now. Some of the Drake fans might be a little bit in their feels right now. You can certainly sense that. And yeah, I mean, it's been unique on my end to navigate this, Luke, from the play-by-play perspective. One thing, for me is I had never called play-by-play on the radio prior to getting to Drake. And so I walk in and it's 7 consecutive 20-win seasons. It's 4 NCAA tournament appearances, a couple NCAA tournament wins in there. And it's like, all right, this isn't bad. This is a pretty good gig. Everybody's liking what I'm saying, even though, skill wise, it may not be at the upper echelon, but everybody likes what I have to say when it's positive news. So yeah, I mean, you have to check yourself a little bit. I feel like as a play-by-play broadcaster, you are the voice of the fans, but also you're a little bit of a voice translating what's happening behind the scenes of the program and then carrying that to the fans. So you're in this kind of unique push and pull, especially in times like this. So, I think the big thing for me is being honest of what is happening. Drake has the worst defense in the Missouri Valley Conference. We've lost 6 straight games. Energy and effort has lacked. Last night, Northern Iowa, we run a little 3-2 zone, run some 2-3 zone, ball pressure up the floor. There's some changes in the starting lineup so that coaches are pushing some different buttons. But Northern Iowa had every single answer. They had an answer for everything yesterday. And so yeah, that's a little bit of reflection on just where Drake is today. in terms of, basketball, just where we're at today. We'll leave it at that. So you have to be honest, but then also you see a little bit of behind the scenes of the work that this group is putting in. And, people will, one thing that I've heard that's popped up a little bit is, Coach Henderson looks too happy on the sidelines for what we're going through. He should be feeling this more and more. Guys, nobody is wearing this more than Coach Henderson. I promise you that. And kind of with that, kind of in that same vein, that is Coach Henderson's demeanor. Could you imagine going through a tough moment, whether it's losing basketball games or anything else? I mean, we've seen around our state of Iowa, Northern Iowa lost a football player this weekend. Iowa Lakes Community College, they lost a baseball player earlier this week. It's been a hard week. Could you imagine having a coach leading your program that's a jerk, that doesn't invest into his players that way? I mean, yeah, times are a little tough and whatnot, but, Coach Henderson brings a steadiness to this time. And when this gets right, and Coach Henderson has said this to me behind the scenes, said, when we get rolling, Michael, I promise you, nothing's going to look any different behind the scenes. I'm going to be the same guy that I am today, tomorrow, and, 5 years, 10 years from now. And I think that shows me that the Bulldogs are in good hands. It sucks going through this right now, but to have that type of leadership is, it's really, really refreshing and good to be a part of.
Michael, the last rough patch you guys had, you got yourself right at Banterra Center, unfortunately at our expense. And something that really impressed Luke and I the day before the game, we had an opportunity to visit with Coach Henderson, and they were in a very similar spot you're in right now. And what impressed us was his communication to us about, no matter what the score is, we are who we're going to stay true to ourselves. And to further that point, and I'm going to ask you a little bit more about Coach Henderson, you guys are down 6 with 6 minutes to go, and he brings Federico out of the game after a play on the defensive end that didn't work right. And he hugged the guy. And I'm looking at it because I want, being a former coach, I can hear the coach speak. Now I want to see if he implies it and really implements it. He hugs the guy coming out of the game. You're down 6. And we know how that game ended. And it's been talked about a lot in Carbondale. On those types of lines, what's impressed you so much, in addition to what you said about Coach Henderson and his staff? Does his staff take on his personality?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. This is, if Coach Henderson wasn't able to bring a ton of players over from South Dakota State, wasn't able to, bring a lot of his guys, quote unquote, in, like we saw last year with Coach McCollum bringing, 4 players up from Northwest Missouri State. But he was able to bring his coaching staff and a lot of guys that have been around him and trust him and understand him. And they embody they embody kind of the 5 words that Coach Henderson continuously points back to, and what they want this program to be. So yeah, the way he is on the floor, behind the scenes, everywhere, at home, you talk to his wife, Alicia, it's like he wakes up in a good mood, and he's always keeps a positive attitude. That's just within his nature. So yeah, no, that's definitely filtered through. And, I would say where, yes, Coach Henderson is going to pull you when times get tough. He's going to pull you in when things are going good. He's going to pull you in. But also, I mean, he has not been afraid to challenge players. I mean, twice this season, he has sat the leading scorer in the Missouri Valley Conference. A couple times this year, we're right there next to them on the bench. He's a big teddy bear, but he's not afraid to, get into players in moments where they've screwed up or they've messed up. So, yeah, I mean, It'll be it's just a tough stretch. It's really tough right now for this team. I would say maybe some mistakes were made 6-7 months ago. You look at Owen Larson. I think the whole season kind of hinged on how the team responded to Owen Larson returning to the lineup in mid-December, and how Larson recovered from injury, because he was the lone South Dakota State transfer that came in, and we're still less than a year away from when Larson blew out his ACL, MCL, and LCL, and so it just, that has not meshed the way that I think the coaches had anticipated, and that's a miss, and they're going to have to own that. They're going to have to wear that, and they are, but I think they are wearing it in a way that others may not fully understand. But being behind the scenes, I sure appreciate it.
We're going to get into their team a little bit, but I want to kind of segue back a little bit. I know you have gotten here, quote unquote, in the good times, but what is obvious about Drake from the DeVries era to the McCollum era, now into the Henderson era, not necessarily with the coaching and maybe even the basketball, but what's obvious to you that's changed at Drake University, that there's a different mindset of athletic excellence, even beyond the Drake relays that we've been seeing? Darren did a great job, and he's doing a good job at Indiana, but man, one person can't flip everything that quickly. Somewhere along the line in the Drake line of thinking, it's different than it was in the 90s. What can you attribute that to?
I mean, it's all about leadership. Everything starts at the top. So President Marty Martin got to Drake in the mid 2010s, and he came from Gonzaga. He grew up a Kentucky fan, so he understands how basketball can play a role in a community and in a state. And then he hired Brian Harden, who came from Marquette, who kind of understands what it takes to get to that upper echelon of mid-major programs. And I think their cohesiveness, their connection between, we call it here, Forest Avenue, the road that the Knapp Center sits on, it divides the athletic facilities and the academic facilities. I don't know if it's necessarily by design, but that's how it is. So there had been a disconnect between Forest Avenue for many years, and it's such a blurred line now. I'll take you inside a little bit of how Drake University as a whole looks now. So Marty Martin says, we got to lean into sports. Sports are the front porch to our university. So in the School of Journalism, they have now started first year this year, a sports media and communications major. So when we talk about really leaning into sports and blurring that line between Forest, I mean, that major, adding a new major on campus that is sports specific, tells you that story. So, I mean, you see that that connection in ways like that. And then I think Brian Harden's leadership has been fantastic. I think he does a really good job of identifying coaches that are not only good X's and O's coaches, but also are coaches that can kind of carry the banner of what we want as an institution. And just being good people. And then he also prioritizes coaches that can identify good, talented players and good people to bring in here into our Des Moines community. And so I think you have a lot of that stuff happening. There is a standard set by the leaders and our president and our director of athletics, and that has trickled down to everybody within the staff and everybody on the coaching side of things, and then the players feel that. I mean, we've won 3 consecutive PFL championships, Pioneer Football League championships, with 2 different coaches, and now we're going into another coaching search on the football side of things. Our men's and women's soccer programs won regular season titles this past fall, and they're playing in a brand new state-of-the-art facility. So, those are the things that are happening around Drake. That's not just basketball specific, but it does filter out. throughout, the entire department.
Yeah, I think the only really bad hire that Brian Harden's ever been a part of, Michael, is when he had a say in who the sideline reporter would be for the Ball State Football Radio Network back in the day, and he hired Luke Martin. So I think it's the only questionable
learned
hire
from
that he
learned
learned
from
from it, man. He learned from it way on down the line. Of course, Brian just have so much respect for him and loved him when he was in Muncie, and obviously seeing him with Bill Scholl, what they continue to do at Marquette, and now it's clear he's one of the best athletic directors, not just in our league, but anywhere across the country. So love Brian to death. Let's get into your team, Michael. And man, another guy that I absolutely loved when I was in Terre Haute was Eli Shetler. And we talked a lot about Eli, and I'm so happy for him that, man, his role has just continued to expand. And now a lot of fans are starting to see, man, the type of talent that he has. How would you describe the year that Eli has had and the type of role that he can play for Drake here down the stretch of the season?
Yeah, I think he's been, along with Andrew Aaliyah, one of our most consistent players on both ends of the floor. And, he's had a unique journey. Starts at Indiana State. So he's with Coach Schertz. He comes over to Drake. He's with Coach McCollum. And one of the things that I really loved about kind of his background is you talk about maybe a little inside Drake athletics. Whenever Coach Mack went to Iowa, Brian Harden, came into the locker room and talked to Eli Shetler, Andrew Aaliyah, and Joey Mattione. It was still kind of up in the air at the time between going to Iowa and staying at Drake. And Brian Harden asked those three guys, I would like to hear what you're looking for in a coach, some characteristics that will fit here at Drake, and kind of in order to retain you guys. And Eli Shetler put down an entire list. I think it was three coaches, what he liked about each one of them. And at the top of that list was Coach Henderson, because he was recruited to South Dakota State out of Wichita and had that connection and really liked what Hendo had to say and the style of play that the Jackrabbits played with. And so you have that kind of setting the base for this year. And one thing that was really impressive about Eli, even last year, is the work he was putting in as a red shirt, trying to get bigger and stronger to be able to defend. He lacked the physicality that is needed in the Missouri Valley Conference to defend and get on the floor, because that's what gets you on the floor, is being good at defense, not only in Coach Mack's system, but also with Coach Henderson. And so that was something that he really prioritized. And if you watch Eli walking around like this summer and into the fall, it's like, dang, all right. You can tell Eli has been in the gym. And so you mix that with him continuing to develop his shot, get a shot off quicker, making tougher shots, coming off of screens and all that stuff. I've just been really impressed with his progress this year. And when you think about it, he has a couple more years. And, I think being thrust into the starting lineup this year was just a sign of the energy and effort and consistency he was bringing to the floor. With Wilkins Jr. Zach getting hurt, Eli steps in there. And, I think there's still really a lot of room for Eli to grow, which is exciting.
I remember early on in the season, we go back to non-conference. Coach Watson, we talk every day. I'm sure his wife Carol gets annoyed by how often we talk from a daily standpoint. But I remember him calling me. He's like, "Luke, man, I just saw Drake play Georgia Tech, and Jalen Quinn can play." Yeah. No doubt, he had an outstanding game that night. I think 31 points against the Yellow Jackets. And not to say that he was in a little bit of a funk coming to Carbondale, but he wasn't consistently scoring at the clip like he has been. I know the wins haven't been there, but man, his numbers have been so sky high. And really, since that night in Carbondale, it seems like it's really flipped for him. You see him from a behind the scenes standpoint. What type of guy is he behind the scenes when you're around him at practice, and what translates to him just scoring at an extremely high clip?
No, JQ is great. And it's been cool to see his journey a little bit. He's a defensive guy, 3 years at Loyola, averaged like 3 points a game. had never scored in double figures at Loyola. And here he goes off. He scored in the 30s 4 times this season. His output this season, more than 500 points. That's twice as many as he scored in any season at Loyola. So it's been fun to see his development as well. And, Coach Henderson in the postgame show yesterday kind of pointed, he moved JQ to the bench along with Owen Larson. And I thought JQ did a really good job of responding yesterday against Northern Iowa. Comes out, scores 20 points off the bench, only had 2 turnovers. He got into some trouble turning the ball over and letting that affect him. And that's I think the slight a little bit on JQ is if things aren't going perfectly well, if you miss a layup or if you're getting harassed a little bit more than you think you should be and think you're getting fouled, he'll let some of that stuff impact him, and it'll turn up in settling for 3-point shots. It'll turn up in turnovers and all that stuff. Well, it was kind of a little check-in this weekend, I think, with Jalen Quinn of, okay, hey, let's come off the bench. We're going to start with some defensive intensity. And how are you going to respond to this? And I thought JQ did a really nice job of cleaning some of that stuff up, playing within himself, sharing the basketball, getting his teammates involved. And, he continues to kind of add to his offensive numbers. And I think if Drake is going to have a chance at making a magical run in Arch Madness, which looks more unlikely and unlikely by the day, it's going to be him. It's going to be up to JQ and how he's able to set his teammates up on the offensive end. And then also, can JQ defend with the intensity that's needed for, the 30 to 35 minutes that he's on the floor?
The teams in the top of the league undoubtedly have great players. And a lot of great guards in this league, and it's always been a really good guard league. But Sharnowski at Belmont, backed up by Brigham Rogers, big-time post presence. Jonovich was terrific against Southern in their last outing. Just down the list, Fred King, and just on and on. But Federico seems to be your guy that's got to handle that position. How has he grown? He's the one guy that seems to be pretty consistent in terms of starting, and seems like Coach trusts him a lot. I brought up the point about, down 6 to go, gives Federico, takes him out, gives him a hug, and then he wasn't sitting on that bench in that overtime. I know that. How have you been impressed by his growth as a player?
Yeah, it's sometimes it's hard to remember that he has, his last, prior to playing a game this year, his previous game that he had played in was over in Helsinki, Finland. So, he's playing his first college basketball games this year. He joined South Carolina mid-season last year and never, really got an opportunity at South Carolina. Comes over here, is playing, a starter's role and playing as an undersized 5. So because of, just the lineup this year, he's been kind of forced into a role that maybe won't be his role moving forward. I know they like his ability to, down the road, be able to kind of pick and pop and knock down threes. He hasn't quite developed into that yet, but, he's still a sophomore, still a young guy, so has plenty of room to grow. But yeah, I've been impressed at how he continues to chip away and learn. And, that's the thing. I think across the board, this entire roster, there have been guys that have improved all year long, but it just hasn't been able to all connect in, 40 minutes of basketball, except, the Murray State game at home. I felt like you kind of saw everybody clicking at once. And, even down at the Banterra Center, down double digits in that basketball game, had a great stretch in the second half, and then able to get the win in overtime. But, that was Southern's game for a great majority of that night.
Michael, one of the things that's pretty amazing when I look at in-conference league stats only, which I think is a really good indicator of just where teams are at.
Absolutely.
Offensively, there's only one top 100 team in the country in terms of their offensive rating. It shouldn't surprise that that's Belmont. But you flip it over the defensive rating, there are 4 teams in the league that are top 50 in the country in terms of their defensive rating, which to me, so many people want to talk about offense in this league and how offense can generate. There's been some really good defenses in the league, and surprisingly, Southern is one of the top defensive teams in the league. And actually, as we talk today, they're 22nd in the country when you just take their in-league games against other teams' in-league games throughout the year. My point being is, what has been the biggest frustration for Coach Henderson in terms of defensively, where it just hasn't been at the level that he would have hoped?
I mean, there's no doubt it's defending the 3-point line. And then I think starting games, starting games, it's been a little bit of lack of energy and effort and attention to detail that has frustrated him, hence the, changing of the starting lineup. But I mean, the Bulldogs were getting down in the previous 5 games before playing Northern Iowa, just burying themselves in double-digit holes early on and just right out the gate. And then you got to fight your way back for 30 minutes of basketball. And that's just a recipe for disaster. Now, credit to the Bulldogs. They have fought in each one of those games and then eventually come up short. But I think Coach Henderson said that in those 5 previous games, the first 5 games of a losing streak, that teams were on pace to score 147 points in the first 5 minutes of each of those games combined. And it's like, wow, okay. So one, you're burying yourselves in a hole. And then, really in crunch time, you're not defending the 3-point line. And, Northern Iowa last night, they averaged 7 threes per game. And this is how it's been all year. They hit 12 last night. And they missed some open threes early on in the game that allowed the Bulldogs to get out in front. And then you fade. And, we saw Valpo come in here knocking down threes. UIC a couple times this season has shot above their 3-point average. I go back to the Southern Illinois game again. I mean, there were some wide open looks for the Salukis that night that just didn't go in. And, otherwise, if you hit one more three, a couple more threes, that's a completely different basketball game in the second half. I think, I have the stats here pulled up right now, is 0 for 14 in the second half, 0 for 1 in overtime. So 0 for 15 from 3-point range. And that was just truly just tough shooting night for the Salukis.
Yeah, and the Bradley game just yesterday, 0 for 15 from 3. So that 0 for 15, Michael, no doubt rings true for SIU when it comes to just those 3-point shooting woes. Look, we talk about this game, and we'll end it on that note in a moment. But just as a league whole, I mean, it's been a crazy year, Michael, when you really think of it. And no doubt, tip the cap to Belmont and what they've done, and they're just one win away from securing the championship. Yet you look at their losses; they've gone the road to Terre Haute, got beat by 1 in overtime. Southern was able to go into their building and beat them in the Curb Event Center this year. There's multiple other teams. Clearly, Northern Iowa has had a really good matchup with Murray this year, beating them twice. And that's kind of it's the agonizing part of our jobs. It's also the fun part of our jobs where you can go through and go, man, there are teams you match up well with. And you're like, all right, if you can get that matchup or that path in St. Louis, that can open up the hope. I know, look, right now the Salukis are feeling it too. Just like you have been describing with Drake. How do you go when you look at just what you want to see here, Michael, down the stretch? Where do you go like, this is what we need to see if we're Drake to give ourselves going to St. Louis when you make that trip, regardless of what's happened in the past? We know that should be enough confidence in general to begin with, but just what you need to see here in the final 3 games for Drake where you can go, all right, like there is a chance here when you can go to St. Louis and feel good about yourself.
Yeah, well, first off, Belmont has been extremely impressive, and they're all so young. I mean, they have some older players mixed in there, but they have some really key play. I mean, Sharnowski's a sophomore. That's insane. But they're talented. Casey Alexander's done a really nice job there. So kudos to them. Excited to see what they can do in St. Louis. As for the Bulldogs, Coach Henderson said in the postgame show, we're not going to turn into the Lakers overnight. But what are some of the things that we can do defensively that can give us a chance down the stretch and in St. Louis to make that run? And, that's where I want to see, against Southern, we'll have a week off and then go to Valparaiso on Wednesday night. And then we'll close up shop with Northern Iowa coming to the Knapp Center on March 1st. So, in those 3 games, what are some of the things that we can do defensively that can just tighten up a little bit? Have a player there with a hand in every 3-point shooter's face. How can we protect the paint just a little bit better? Are there some of those rebounding the basketball? Can you just get a little bit better at those areas? And then on the other end, continue to roll on the offensive end. I think, the 6-game losing streak, a lot of things got to go wrong. And we're also not shooting the ball very well. There have been some really open looks. Andrew Aaliyah has gone cold. When there's an open 3, Andrew Aaliyah has hit it this season. And in clutch moments. That hasn't been happening as of late. A couple other guys you would love to see hit a couple shots from outside. Jay-Sean Thomas, maybe Braden Applehans gets a little bit more of a run. So hopefully you can catch a little fire heading into St. Louis from outside. So, but for me, it's all in the defensive end. It's all intensity. I would love to see this group really play with pride on that end of the floor coming down the stretch. And I get it. These are, 13 players on this roster, 11 of them coming from all different places. And then you have 2 players from Drake, one that had a broken foot last year and another that redshirted. So it was a challenge from day one. I thought this team could compete for a championship if the stars aligned, and they did not. So we're kind of eating that right now. But there's something in there. There's something in this group that if they can clean up some stuff on the defensive end of the floor, rebound with some intensity, play with pride, and then you get into St. Louis, maybe get a matchup that works well, pull off an upset, and then you get into the weekend and anything can happen.
Michael, and this year, when I'm sure you do the same with Mike, and you guys do a great job on the Bulldog Radio Network of just there's times where you hit refresh on that scoreboard while you're in game and you go, whoa.
Yeah.
They expect that score, and my whole point in saying that is I know every year it feels like there's that conversation of, okay, is there a team from Thursday that could potentially make a run? And most times than not, outside of Valpo back in 1920, there hasn't been a team that's realistically done it and shown it. But I'm telling you, this year, more than ever, let me just say there are not going to be a lot of scores come St. Louis and Arch Madness that I think all of us are going to be looking at and going, yeah, that's a complete shock. I don't think, even as we said, I'm sure if we had Casey Alexander on with us today or Rob Eason or Brian Wardle, I don't think there's a lot of teams where they're going to be sitting there on Friday of who they're going to be playing and going, yeah, this is great. Yeah, we're glad we're signed up for this for our first game here on Friday.
I mean, in all likelihood, Murray, UIC, Illinois State, or Northern Iowa is going to play on Thursday. Those are all teams that could win the championship with the way that UIC, Illinois State, and Northern Iowa play defense and rebound the basketball. Murray State can outscore anybody, and with their talent, I mean, my goodness, yeah, there are. It's gonna be funny with watching that Thursday night and who comes out there, who can make a run. But you gotta. It's all right last year. Get hot from 3-point range, and I mean he was just making everything. He goes on a run. Valpo goes on a run, almost makes a championship game, and then. But I think for the most part, for any team to make a run, you gotta play good defense and you gotta rebound the basketball because shooting is so hard in that arena and on that stage. And when the stakes are high, the shots don't always go in, but you can lean on your defense. And so if any team's going to make a run, it's going to be that team that connects well defensively down that stretch. And, Northern Iowa, they've kept that. Even in their 5-game losing streak, they were still defending well. So they've continued to have that identity, which has been really impressive. Now they're making shots and they're doing some of the other stuff, which I know is going to make anybody nervous, especially if they end up on Thursday night.
Oh, no question. And of course, it's where the Salukis will head after Wednesday in Des Moines.
I'll see you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it is
Thursday
coming.
night Hilton party.
Yes, Thursday night Hilton party indeed for SIU. But man, no doubt, Drake, they can always rely on you, Michael, and you do an outstanding job there in Des Moines, and we appreciate you coming on and talking with us, and look forward to seeing you and Mike and everybody else in Des Moines on Wednesday night.
Oh yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's like pushing 70 degrees here today. I don't know if it's going to be the same on Wednesday for y'all when you get to town, but I think it's going to be a little cooler, but still not bad. So we're laying out the blue carpet for the Salukis as they roll into Iowa.
Well, we know it's Des Moines because typically Frostbite Falls, as we like to call Cedar Falls, it's never that warm. So, we know Des Moines is going to be pulling the warmth for us this week.
Yes. Yeah. Just if you're below, if you're south of Highway 20 or maybe even Highway 30, depending on the year, you're in good shape. But you get much north of there and it's tough living.
Big thank you to Michael Admire for joining us here on the podcast. And Coach Watts, we talked about with Michael too, and it is a big reason why I enjoy doing this podcast, and talking to everybody. And it's like we described with him, we can all get in our silos, within your teams. And clearly right now, Drake is in a tough skid, having lost 6 in a row and not the same version that we saw of them. But I also think too, from a Saluki fan perspective, when you look at this game, keep in mind the last time that SIU saw Drake, they blew a 25-point lead at home. And then Southern had a big second half lead, and they find a way to come back and that resiliency down the stretch and win in overtime. So for me, I get it. I understand Drake's lost 6 in a row, but I think you and I both know what we're expecting in terms of the effort level for Drake at home come Wednesday night.
Yeah, they're hungry. I think Southern's very hungry as well. The losing to Drake 12 out of 13, man, that is a number it's kind of hard for me to digest. But they've really had it going. And as we know, when we talk to Coach Henderson, he's not going to let his team feel sorry for themselves. They're going to have the best version of themselves. I think it's going to be definitely a game on paper that it's obvious Southern's got to really, really pound that lane. They got to go at Federico and other guys inside that lane. But man, there's a guy in this league that can carry his team, and Jalen Quinn can do it. And Southern better have an answer and better know where he really goes and gets his buckets from. They did a super great job in creating switches. Southern's, we've talked unfortunately too much about switching. Southern got beat on a switch that put Quinn with House, and Quinn just got what he wanted down the stretch, ended up being plenty to win the game. So Southern's got to be smart in how they defend. They've got good numbers, but man, late game situations, you can't be stubborn with playing percentages. You've got to be smart with personnel and mismatches. That's going to be a big factor in this game on Wednesday.
And of course, the one thing that Drake has been so good at from Coach DeVries, what he flipped, of course, Coach McCollum in his 1 year, and I have no doubts that Coach Henderson's going to do it as well. They've been really good at home. They have changed the Knapp Center to a really tough home court. Unfortunately, this year for Drake, 6-9 at home. I know that's an area too for them that's been a frustration, just like for SIU, Coach Watson. I mean, the Salukis, they're 4-8. 4-8 away from them. They have a winning record at home because of their non-conference. But with the loss to Bradley the other night, they clinched a losing season at home in league play. And look, if you want to compete in the top half of the league, if you want to get into and we're saying not even just competing to win the league championship, if you want to be in the top 5, you have to be good at home. You cannot have a losing record at home. And unfortunately, both these teams, Southern and Drake, that's why they're at where they're at in the conference standings, is because they've let too many close games at home get away.
I was so impressed in the Bradley game. It's that we started hearing some noise in that Bradley game that reminds me of some of those Saluki flashbacks when there were big moments and our crowd got loud and got into it. But I've used this term a lot. You've got to recycle the energy. Southern's got to give that crowd an opportunity to get into the game, and then the crowd will give it back to you. They will recycle it. But when they recycle it, you got to keep giving it to them. And it's not like you can just coast on having your fans roll. But playing away from home, the flip side of that is, and this isn't crazy either, I'm not so sure this team doesn't play better on the road and feed off of Drake's crowds. We're going to find out if that theory holds up, because Drake will give their team their hometown crowd an opportunity to get loud. And how will Southern respond? We'll see. It's kind of a quirky year, and this while Southern isn't shooting well from three, and we talked about that in the previous segment, Southern's doing so many good things. That Bradley game, Southern did so many good things throughout that game in terms of, just rebounding well and shooting great free throws and doing so many things that we'll spot on when it's not up to par or even beyond par. But now Southern really has to close this season out starting with Drake.
And again, what's so important to keep in mind too, and we've hinted at it, odds are it may be a rematch in St. Louis between these two teams with just how the conference standings look. But Southern still, with 4 games left and still only 2 games back of a next seed line, you may not think there's a major difference between 8-9 and a 7-10. There's a major difference in terms of not only your path, but in terms of how the tournament can look. So as much as you may want to be like, all right, your Thursday, et cetera, feel down, there's still a chance that Southern can improve their seed line. Probably can't get to 6, but again, with 4 games left, if you do the math, you could technically get the 10 wins. Who knows with some of those others. We talked to you about Illinois State. It's going to be tough for Illinois State to get some wins here down the stretch. Obviously, Northern Iowa, Southern will see and have a chance to potentially sweep Northern Iowa, which there won't be very many teams that could say that this year against the Panthers. But bottom line, it's an important game for SIU on the road to have an opportunity to possibly, this will be a team that you're going to see most likely in Thursday at St. Louis. Again, a big thank you to Michael Admire, who joined us on the podcast this week. Again, as SIU and Drake, it will be a 6:30 local tip, 6:30 Central tip in Des Moines on Wednesday night, which means our pregame coverage will begin at 5:30 from the Napa Center. That does it for the Saluki Radio Basketball Podcast. For the Hall of Famer Rodney Watson, I am Luke Martin saying so long. We will talk to you Wednesday in the state of Iowa. Go Dogs.
This has been Saluki Royalty, the official podcast for Saluki Athletics. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review however you listen. The preceding has been a Learfield presentation on the Saluki Sports Network.